Computer. So thank you for joining Marianne and the Professor. I am joined this afternoon by Randy Mulder, who is a Calgarian and who is about to embark on a big adventure. So I thought that I would touch base with you, Randy, and ask you some questions. And so thank you for taking the time to chat.
Happy to be here.
So Randy, I understand that you are about to head off away from Canada. Tell us what's going on in your life.
Well, on Tuesday morning, I'm boarding a private aircraft and heading to San Jose, Costa Rica, to be there Tuesday afternoon at some point, hopefully.
So what precipitated this?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a long story. So when I finished high school, I went to the Arctic and I ended up getting into business for myself. And about the same time, a friend of mine stayed back home in Ontario and he started a business. And we always said, you know, we'll get into our 50s and we'll be kicked back. So I turned 60 this year and we had a conversation. We stay in conversation regularly. And we had a conversation back in February. He says, I think I'm going to hang it up. Like I'm 10 years past the due date and, you know, we're good. And I'm like, no, not doing that. Like, why would you do that? You're still young. You got something to contribute, right? So I didn't sleep for about a week after that. I kept thinking about it. I was like, yeah, you know, maybe. And it was like, okay, no, I'm gonna hang it up. And I had, for the last number of years, been working for a contractor, and in a fairly decent, very lucrative job actually. And I was let go because I wouldn't follow the mandates. I wouldn't wear a mask and get the jab. So I was let go. And that actually happened last September. And so, I mean, I was good. I was good with it. And I was like, you know what, I can do this and I don't need any more. I have enough. And so after the conversation with my buddy, I'm like, well, where did you always want to winter? And I had always wanted to, Costa Rica, after all my travels over the years, had remained at the top of my list as a place to winter, go for a month or two, or whatever, right? And of course, the last 2 years locked down, couldn't go anywhere. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go there full time and they can lock down whatever they want. Like they might lock me down there, but I'll be fine with it, right? I'm not shoveling anything. And so, yeah, that's how the thing kind of fell together.
So you were working with someone who was mandating masks or vaccines and yes. You decided enough and you said no.
Yeah.
So, but you had your own business as well, did you not? Or
so I still have a couple of companies, property management companies. They own property, and but I was not actively in business. I had a construction company for 30 years. I still have it, but it doesn't do anything. And so I'd been kind of semi-retired, and I ended up working for this company. It was only going to be for 2 years, and I ended up doing 12. And like I work for fun, right? So, so anyway, but I needed that wake up call. I needed to be asked to leave, or I wouldn't have left, right? And I'm glad it happened that way.
Yeah. So what does he think? What do your colleagues, what do your family members think of this decision to pull up your roots and leave the country?
Yeah, well, you know, when the mandate came down at where I worked, I was a mentor to a number of younger fellows who were, you know, coming up the ladder in the construction. And my phone lit up that day and they're like, what are we going to do? Like, what do we do? And I said, well, I know what I'm going to do. And over a week or so, I said, you know, if all of you guys, and there was like I don't know, a dozen, if we all just walked and said, no, when it's September, the snow's coming, like management, they're all, you know, foremen and superintendents, is like, they'll be crying for you to come back because they need these jobs to go. Well, I was the only one that left, like that they couldn't, and they're younger and they have kids and yeah, all the stuff. So they all took the jab anyway. So, but they're all like, right on, you're leaving, you're making a stand. So, but at that point I hadn't said I was going anywhere yet, but so as time progressed, so then let's fast forward to February, March, when I decided that, you know, that this is where I was going to go. I made the announcement first to my daughter, and she's like, what's wrong? What's going on? Why? I said, I'm selling the ranch, right? And she's, what, are you sick? I said, no, well, maybe. And so anyway, she was kind of shocked for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then she says, "You know what? That's a great idea." So yeah, so, and I have a brother that I'm staying with here right now, and he's he likes the idea, but he doesn't want to see me go, right? So
Yeah.
but yeah, most people are quite supportive of it. There's a few people that think I'm nuts, but I've had that all my life.
Yeah. So did you really agonize over this? I mean,
No,
pulling your roots up and leaving your country is a big decision.
it is a big decision, but I did it when I was, in my teens. When I went to the Arctic, it was like going to a different world, right? So
Mhm.
it wasn't unusual for me. And then when I left the Arctic and came here, it was another big deal, right? And so yeah, it was not, I didn't, it's felt right from the start.
Mhm.
Yeah, it just felt like the right thing to do.
So what is it that you don't have an inclination to stay and battle it out in Canada? I mean, what is your prediction as to what's going to happen here?
Well, government overreach is yeah, I mean, it's become quite prevalent. And working in the Arctic, I always say it was the canary in the coal mine, because stuff happened up there before it happened down here. And they slowly took away people's freedoms over the years up there. The North is a basket case now. It's like I wouldn't want to do business there anymore. Um, and so I was fighting it all the time up there. I was active against it, but it was like beating your head against a brick wall. No one saw what was going on, right? So coming down here and seeing what was really accelerating here, I'm like, I'm done. I don't have it in me to sit here and fight. Like, and so I tell young people, particularly my kids and people that, in their 20s or even 30s, is like, well, if you can't go and you can stick it out here, this country has the best bones of any country in the world. Like, we've got
Mhm.
the resources. Like, we should be all living here tax free. There shouldn't be any jobless problems. And like, we've got everything the world wants, and yet somehow it's being frittered away somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And so I say, if you can stick it out for 10 years, this is going to crash. This system is going to crash. There's no other answer. It has to. It's so far gone now. Like, the political system is a mess. The bureaucracy is so bloated. It's going to crash. It's going to implode. And then, anybody worth their salt, the world is your oyster. There will be so many needs that you can fill, find it and go for it. And so, yeah, and who knows, if I still got some energy in 10 years, I might come back and do that too. Right?
So when you say the system's going to crash, I mean, you obviously understand the agenda, more of the globalist agenda with Canada. So how do you see it playing itself out in this country?
Well, I think the globalist agenda will ultimately fail, but they've kicked over enough walls and stones now that the damage is done. And so there will be a lot of hurt. There's going to be a lot of hurt, a lot of financial hurt, and a lot of death, I think. And people, when they finally figure out that the government's been trying to kill them, there will be an uprising. There will be a lot of outcry. And you're starting to see it. People are really starting to question. So I think, and that's how the system's going to crash. People will just lose all faith in government. I mean, you follow Martin Armstrong. I've been following him for years. He's like, yeah, confidence in government is going to be gone. That's what happens, right? People just give up. And so that's what I see happening. And I see that happening globally. Like, I tell people I'm under no illusions that going to Costa Rica is going to be any sort of nirvana. They can be under the same sort of thing, but I can be out in the boonies somewhere growing my own food, and right, and I can do that. I'm an introvert. I can live alone for months on end. So
That's right. Well, it's a lot easier to be self-sufficient in a country like Costa Rica,
yeah,
where the elements are working in your favor.
yes,
You've got access to fresh water, etc. So I understand that completely. But I find your comment very intriguing about your experience in the north. You had some businesses up in Nunavut. You saw what happened in the northern communities, and now it's almost like you're seeing a repeat of the demolition of a society, in a sense. Would you
yeah.
say that's
And it's through nurture. It's through, we, the government, will take care of you. And so they're nurturing people into a sense of complacency. And yeah, there's like the money's leaking all over the place. Taxes are skyrocketing, and there's services are becoming less and less all the time. So It's exactly what happened up there. I mean, they didn't have a huge development up there, but it was just getting the people complacent enough that, okay, we're all good. And, you know,
So what is it about Canadians that makes us so complacent?
yeah, I don't know because, I come from immigrants. My grandparents came here. My parents were young adults when they came with their families, and that generation, my grandfathers, they were go-getters, and they didn't trust government. I mean, that's why they left the countries they came from, right? And it's like
What is your ancestry?
uh Dutch.
Okay, so your parents, if they were alive today, are they alive?
My mother's still alive.
Is she recognizing that there's a problem?
Yes, yeah, she hasn't taken the jab. She's 91 years old. Yeah, former
So
nurse.
that's a very interesting comment because that, in my experience, it's the same. The
Mhm.
People of European descent or people who are come from countries where they know their history
Yeah.
or have experienced some
Mhm.
serious adversity
Yeah.
recognize.
Yeah.
So do you think that's why a lot of Canadians maybe don't understand what's going on is they haven't had any firsthand experience?
I believe that's it. And I also believe that, most people don't want to believe that their government would do anything against them, right? Like,
Mhm, mhm.
they're like, I get that comment a lot. Like, Randy, why would the government do that? I said, government's been doing it all along, right? It's like they're not there for your benefit, right? And it's not that they're not doing it to you. They're just growing so fast. And, I mean, there are elements out there that are nefarious, but I mean, just the system itself is so broken that it's like, it's just imploding.
Yes. So your prediction is that it may take 5 or 10 years for things to really implode here, and then we could return and pick up the pieces.
Yeah, quite possibly. I say 10 years. I mean, the way things are happening, it's accelerating. Wow, it's exponential. I can't believe how fast it's going. So it may be sooner than that, but it's there will be so much opportunity for people, but it's sticking it out, right? So
That's right. But stepping to the sidelines and just letting it happen as opposed to staying here and fighting, does staying and fighting feel futile?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's, you know, well, I'm of two minds. I mean, I think there needs to be an element of fighting, but I mean, protesting and stuff, they just laugh. They don't care about the protest. They don't care about any of that stuff. And so we really are powerless, until things start to shift, and media, like maybe the non-mainstream media becomes more recognized. I mean, you need those weapons, right?
Mhm.
Because right now, I mean, we're fighting a losing battle with government funded media and all that. I'm like I say, I'm done fighting, and it's like I've banged my head against the wall for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna sit back and watch it go.
So when you talk about media, it is an interesting conversation to have with people that they trust. They trust Global, they trust CBC.
Mhm.
It's a difficult conversation to have with people, right? When you're
Yeah,
saying, listen, you're listening to the media, you're trusting them, but they're
yeah.
lying to you. That's a really hard pill for people to swallow, right?
It is. And it's unusual in that when you bring up the comment about, well, how come you're only hearing one side? Like, 10 years ago, if there would have been one vax death, it would have been all over the news. It would have been, now you don't hear any of that. Like, and I asked them the question, why don't you hear that? Oh, well, it's because that's conspiracy. Okay, well,
Yeah.
like,
I mean, you've been a businessman for many years. What do
mhm.
your business partners say to you when they hear that you're leaving? What's the
Yeah,
common,
I don't have any business partners. So yeah. So,
or not your business partners, but people that
oh,
you've been in business with?
there,
What is their response?
most are pretty supportive. Most
Interesting.
are like, man, I wish I could do that. And I'm like, well, you can.
Really interesting.
Yeah,
But you're
yeah,
from Calgary. I wonder, and I'm from Vancouver. I'm wondering if there's a difference in the
yeah.
mindset.
I don't know. I mean, so there are many people leaving here, not any that I know. But for instance, I had to get a permit I'm taking my dog, and I had to get a CFIA permit. And I went in there last Thursday, I believe, anyway, and he had to make an appointment. And so they have a government vet there that looks over the document. And he said, I think he said, you're the fourth person here today in a row getting a permit to take their pet to Costa Rica.
Interesting.
Just
Interesting.
on last Thursday afternoon. Yeah.
Well, and
So
and this is on the other side of things. A realtor that we know in Costa Rica said, my last 8 deals have been with Canadians.
mhm,
And he was American. He goes, what's going on in Canada? It's
yeah.
like, why? There's a mass exodus.
Mm,
I listened to Michael Campbell, and he had on as a guest Peter Brown from Canaccord Capital.
yes.
And
Yes. I heard
Peter
the
Brown
interview.
commented, he said, there's a mass flight of capital out of Canada.
Yeah.
Big business people, they're leaving, and they're leaving with all of their assets. And he's commenting on it. And he's such a rock in terms of the resource sector here as a businessman.
Right.
But, he and Mike Campbell were talking about this phenomenon. It's very true. There is a mass exodus of people and capital. And there's
Yeah,
a lot of
and when the
conflict.
government, when they wake up, they're going to see that all this talent and money's gone.
Yes.
And I mean, the government that love that. I mean, the bureaucracy typically is against business anytime I've ever
Mhm.
come across it. They're against, they hate you, right? Like they think they should be running the show. So,
Yeah.
so that element there is fine with it. But when they figure out that that's where the money comes from to run your country, there's going to be some crying.
Exactly. And yet there's that flip side where you think, well, maybe they're happy that they have all the complacent, obedient people stay. It's very easy to seize control of a country
Yeah,
when you only have those who are purely obedient and submissive.
true.
Dang,
Yeah.
it's an easy takeover
Yeah.
when you
But
get
then,
us
then
out
what
of.
do you do after that, right? Like where does it, how do you run the country after that? It's just,
Yeah. I agree with you, though, that Canada, in terms of, it has everything going for it.
mhm,
It has
yeah,
the resources, extraordinary richness in terms of resources, in terms of education base, position, geopolitical position. It is the cherry, I think, in the world. But it's heartbreaking to see
yeah,
it.
no, it is heartbreaking to see. And I like my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, he would, if he were alive today, he'd be cheering me on. You go, because that's what he did, right? He left Holland when it was going stupid. So yeah.
So this is what. So when you just quickly wanted to ask you about injuries, are you seeing injuries in your circle?
Yeah. Deaths, injuries, not lots, but there are.
Mhm.
And
And are
young people, like a
young
friend of
people?
mine's son-in-law, 52 years old, right? Perfect condition, no, in good shape. Yeah. Dead.
Well, I just had a heartbreaking conversation with a friend a couple of days ago whose husband took his life over the lockdowns. He was not vaccinated, but he was so affected by the lockdowns. And
Mhm.
now she shares with me that her 30-year-old son is having massive chest pains. And I'm like, how much more can my friend go through? She's lost her
Yeah.
husband, and now her only son is having chest pains. I don't know if she's connecting the dots, but he's having, a
Yeah.
multitude of tests done. And I'm thinking myocarditis.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking to watch what is happening around us.
Well, it is. And, just a little anecdote, I've been dealing with my local bank here, and it's just a small town. It's a Scotia bank, but in a small town here, south of Calgary. And like there's only ever one teller there, and I think there's room for 4 tellers. So I got to know the manager there, and I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, out of 7 tellers, or out of 7 frontline employees, we have 4 on long-term disability. And it's all to do with psychological from what's been going on. And it's not mandated to get a vax or anything. Some of them have, some of them haven't. But so today I went to go there, and it was closed. We are temporarily closed. And she said that's going to start happening. We're going to have to close because we won't have people. So we'll close for 2 or 3 days at a time. People are like, that's bad, right?
That's not a good sign when this is a bank. This is a financial institution.
Scotiabank, yeah.
Scotiabank. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Well,
Yeah.
I'm hearing stories of people having difficulty getting assets out of the banks.
Hmm.
They're saying they don't have it. Have you encountered that at all?
No, I've been fortunate. I've moved some money. I'm dealing with SWP, and I've been successful moving. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it is kind of wonderful to speak to people like you who you're not complaining, you're taking action. Obviously, you've been active up until now, but there comes a point when you have to make a decision.
Yeah.
and weigh the advantages and disadvantages, but it's not an easy decision,
No.
and it's so personal. But you've taken the bull by the horn, and you're heading down to Costa Rica on a private charter. And any other comments that you want to say? It's I applaud your
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
I would encourage people, if they are thinking about it. I mean, I built a beautiful ranch over 25 years. It was hard to sell it and leave, right? It was, my signature was all over it. But you can do it. It's just stuff, right? And people say, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm gonna go do it again.
Well, you've done
Do it
it.
again.
You can certainly do it again. What would you say to people who are buying ranches and hoping to eke out an existence here, apart off the grid, so to speak, or kind of in a parallel society? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so for example, the place I sold, you can do that. So the people that bought it, that's their thinking.
Yes.
But it's a long, cold winter, right? It's I'd rather struggle in plus 25 than minus 35. So, but yeah, no, it's doable. There's people doing it, and it's hard work. It's hard work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Randy, fascinating chatting with you. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that we should be touching on, but I think we kind of hit on the major topics. But bravo. I applaud your adventurous spirit to be doing this, and we'll keep in touch and maybe do a follow-up chat with you after you've settled in.
Sure. Be happy to do it.
Yeah. Thank you for your time, and may your flight be uneventful.
Yes.
No mask. No. Oh, actually, let me quickly ask you about that. What was your decision not to fly? Because you're actually allowed to leave the country right now.
Yes.
As an unvaccinated Canadian. But tell me about your decision to hire a private jet to take you right down.
Well, the fact that you have to wear a mask to get out of here and sit on a plane for 8 hours, I lost a job over it. I'm not going to start now, right? I'm done. Like, it's just not happening. And so people say, well, you're crazy to spend that kind of money. I said, it's only money. Just make more, right? That's how you do it, right? So, yeah.
You have a wonderful sort of viewpoint on things. I find it kind of refreshing. But you are really a great example, or maybe will serve as a wonderful inspiration to those who are sitting on the fence thinking, should I or shouldn't I?
I hope so. Yeah, I would encourage them to go. Just do it. Like,
yeah,
what's the worst that can happen? Right?
There's so many Canadians who would love to do what you're doing. What would you say to Canadians who say, I'm not in a position to do it financially, or I have family, or what would you say to them?
Yeah, I guess you got to weigh that out. I mean, are you willing to give up all of your freedoms to maintain what you have now, which you won't have? You won't have free movement with your family. You won't have your job will likely be gone. So do you want to cut and run now? And I mean, you can live for a lot less. People are surprised when they figure out how much money they can actually live on. And you go somewhere, you don't have to worry about heat and that kind of stuff. You can get by on a lot less. And again, I think we've come to be slaves of our stuff. It's like, I got rid of all my stuff. It's like I got a couple of vehicles going down in my shop. All my tools are going down there. That's pretty much it.
And a motorbike, didn't you?
Well, I was trying to sell the motorbike, and no one has any money, so I'm shipping it. So
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I think it's a good hard asset, actually.
Oh yeah.
So I would say, get it down there. So in terms of a timeline, what's your best guess as to what's going to happen back here in Canada this fall?
I think lockdowns are coming again somehow, some way. They're going to convince people that they have to stay at home, and that'll be the final nail in the financial coffin. I mean, like, the small business community is just totaled now, and so that'll just finish everybody off. And that's the lifeblood of this country, is the small, medium-sized businesses. So, and I would encourage, I'm probably speaking to the choir here, but anybody who's listening that's out there that has any question about what's going on, like, just say no. And if more people do it, right, And because you see people, so for instance, when I was in the CFIA getting my permit for the dog, masks required, I walked in the door. There was one patron ahead of me. She was wearing a mask. All the people in there were wearing a mask. They asked me to go stand to the side, right? The patron with the mask left. All the workers in there took their mask off because I wasn't wearing a mask. It's like, so why don't you just leave them off, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And this is it, but it's not very Canadian. Don't you feel? Canadians tend to constantly be trying to appease other people.
Yes.
Nice. But it's beyond that. This is not being nice. This is twisted control.
Yeah. People talk about, I'm a person of faith. People talk, well, you should be doing it in love, right? It's like, that's not loving, right? Like it's harmful. So, but
that is an argument that's used in Christian circles, that you are, if you love your brother, this is what you will do.
Yes.
Which, and how do you respond?
I have yet to find scripture that supports that.
Exactly. Well, Randy, I wish you all the best in your coming week. Safe travels, and we'll connect with you again as you're establishing a ranch down in Costa Rica. We'll see you then.
Okay. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.